They live is partially a political statement, it's partially a tract on the world that we live in today. And as a matter of fact, right now, it's even more true than it was then. We are manipulated by a lot of media around us. We are consumed by consumerism. And as you can see in the recent events in this country, they are still among us. They do live.
Our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
The truth hurts because the truth is all there is. The truth hurts because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth. You can't hide.
Welcome to the Coop Files, the show that explores the social dynamics and psychological forces that shape our world, much like the pecking order in a chicken coop. Why is society structured in rigid hierarchies? Why do we instinctively follow authority? And how is our belief in this structure manipulated to control us? We'll explore the layers of societal conditioning, the psychology behind obedience, the hidden mind control techniques that influence our lives, and the universal moral laws that stand in stark contrast to manufactured authority, connecting the dots between human behavior, authority, and manipulation, and breaking down the structure of control to reveal the truth hidden in plain sight. This is the Coop Files. So, welcome to episode 1 of the Coop Files. The date is the 21st of March 2005 at the time of recording. Just bear with me while I start the presentation. So, who is this show for? Me, essentially. A little bit about me, the frustrations of being surrounded by people who are quite happy to be ignorant, willfully ignorant, to continue in the sleep-induced state that they are, constantly telling me that I'm wrong, that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm thinking too much about things, or that I don't know as much as what they know. People who still think that all of the mistakes are just coincidences or bad luck or incompetence. The statists, people who believe unwaveringly in the state, conformists, the people who conform, that go along just to get along, people who take the path of least resistance, the authoritarians, people who bow down to authority and want to force their beliefs and their authoritarian mindset onto others, the people who hate freedom, the atheists, the left-brainers, calcified in their scientism and their belief in nothing, that nothing matters, that we're here for no reason, that there is no point to anything, that the universe is a result of a cosmic fart. The closed-minded, those who will not even entertain anything which goes against their own beliefs, no matter how detrimental those beliefs are for them. The emotionally and spiritually immature, children trapped in adult bodies. The thin-skinned, those who can't take any criticism, those who are offended at anything you say that goes against their belief. Those opposed to the truth, who enjoy their comfort, who come home, open a beer, watch the football, don't want to rock the boat, just want an easy life, have no morals. The self-loathing, those who have such low self-esteem that they will blindly obey and go against what is right because of their self-destructive nature. You can see there the stick man, you won't believe it. Doesn't matter what it is, you won't believe it. And then you've got the conformists there who think it's a mushroom, but they're all too shit scared to say it because nobody else will say it. Just bear with me. So this presentation is on the subject of authority. What is it? Where does it come from? Why do we need it? Is it benevolent? And where does it lead? Some nice benevolent characters on the screen there. Authority figures. Order followers. Those who want to steal your rights. Politicians who make up rules, and then those who want to steal your health, who don't have your best interests at heart. What is it? Let's start with what it's not. The authorities are people who have the power to make decisions and to make sure that laws are obeyed. The power to make decisions and to make sure that laws are obeyed. Does anybody have that power? Where does it come from? I don't have that power. Do you have that power? The authorities are the people who have the power to make decisions and to make sure that laws are obeyed. There's a repeat there. The lie is always repeated, isn't it? Authority is the right to command and control other people. Command and control other people. Who gives them this right? Where does it come from? Again, do I have the right to control and command? Truth. If somebody has authority, they have a quality which makes other people take notice of what they say. A quality. Yeah, you can take notice of somebody who's got a certain quality and have an authority in a certain subject matter. You can take notice what they say, but you don't have to follow their orders. Someone who is an authority on a particular subject knows a lot about it. That's true. Where does it come from? Let's look at the etymology of the word authority. It comes from the Latin word auctoritas. Please forgive the pronunciation. Which means influence, power, or standing. Auctoritas is derived from the verb auger, meaning to increase or to make grow. To increase and to make grow. Sounds positive, doesn't it? The origin. The concept of authority has existed in human societies for thousands of years. In ancient times, authority was often associated with divine or supernatural powers. As societies grew and became more complex, authority became increasingly based on legal or institutional structures. Today, authority can take many forms, can it? From government officials to religious leaders to corporate executives. So notice that it was originally associated with the divine. And somehow, government has become the divine over time. Distinctive features of authority. Legitimacy. Authority is recognized and accepted by those who are subject to it. Is it? Power. Authority implies the ability to enforce commands or decisions. It implies. Does that make it true? Responsibility. Those in authority are accountable for their actions and decisions. That's a lie, isn't it? Accountability. Don't see many authority figures taking accountability for their actions and decisions, do we? Scope. Authority can be limited to a specific area or domain. For example, managerial authority within a company. Delegation. Authority can be delegated to others who then possess the right to make decisions within the scope of their delegated authority. Horse shit. How can you delegate something that you don't have the right to do? Nobody gives you that right because nobody has that right. So how can it be delegated to somebody else? Legitimacy only comes if those who are subject to it accept it. Nobody actually has the ability or right to force others to act in a certain way. We are all accountable for our own actions and decisions. Authority does not exist in nature, and in a moral society, no one would accept enforcement of commands, as nobody actually has authority over others. It can therefore not be delegated to others. I have no authority over you, so how can I delegate that to a government? I don't have any cake, so I can't give any cake to the government. I don't have any power over you, so how can I give that power to someone else? Why do we need it? Belief in authority is a complex phenomenon rooted in psychology, sociology, and culture. Here are several reasons why people tend to believe in and accept authority. These are the accepted views: social order and stability, need for structure. Authority figures such as government officials, religious leaders, or experts are often seen as essential for maintaining order and predictability in society. Without authority, people fear chaos or anarchy. So we're already talking about fear. Why do you fear chaos? Is it not chaotic enough as it is? Could it get any worse? The rule of law. Many societies are built on the idea that legitimate authority ensures fairness. Does it? Safety. Does it? And the well-being of the population. Does it? Trust in authority helps reinforce this. That's what they want you to believe. That's the manipulation tactic. That if it wasn't for them, we would plunge into a pit of chaos, and that we'd all kill each other or steal from each other, and that we just can't live without them because we are so immoral. How could we possibly cope without them? Well, I've got an idea then. So before authority and government was created, so you had a bunch of immoral people who couldn't be trusted not to kill one another, not to steal. So let's take a section of that society who's completely immoral, and let's put them in a place of authority. And then suddenly they become moral and just and trustworthy, and let them rule the rest. Makes perfect sense. Socialization and cultural conditioning. Learned behavior. From a young age, individuals are socialized to respect parents, teachers, and other authority figures. This early conditioning creates a natural inclination to trust and obey authority. Yeah, that's why they go to school. That's why children go to school, to create authority figures who do not have their best interests at heart and who condition children to believe in the state. Cultural norms. Different societies emphasize different levels of authority. Some cultures stress collectivism and respect for hierarchy, which makes belief in authority more ingrained in their population. Collectivism, communism. Perception of expertise. Heard this before. Trust in knowledge. Authority figures often hold specialized knowledge or expertise. For For example, doctors and scientists and lawyers. Trust the science, trust the doctors, trust the lawyers. People believe in their authority because they assume these figures have better judgment in their domain. Just hand over your judgment. You're a silly little citizen. Just trust the science, trust the doctors, trust the lawyers. They've got your best interests at heart. Delegating decision making. It's convenient to rely on experts or leaders for decision making in complex areas. This gives people a sense of security that someone in charge knows what to do. And because they're lazy, because they don't want to think for themselves. They just want to be safe. Please, just make me safe. I don't want any freedom. I want safety. Psychological need for certainty and security. Cognitive ease. Following authority provides psychological comfort by reducing uncertainty. When people don't have to challenge authority, they avoid the discomfort of critical thinking or dissent. Who wants to be a dissident? Who wants to challenge authority? Who wants that discomfort? Most people. Certainty and security. There is no such thing as certainty. The only thing you can be certain of is death. Security. There is no such thing as security. You can only be so secure. You can only take precautions, and you should, any grown adult should be able to take precautions to maintain their own security to the best of their ability. Does authority keep you secure? Do they? Fear of consequences. Some people accept authority out of fear, whether it's the fear of punishment or the fear of being ostracized for non-conformity. Authority figures can often enforce compliance, which conditions belief and obedience. When you're in fear, you're not thinking for yourself. Fear of punishment for going against the grain. Fear of being ostracized. My friends won't like us. They'll think I'm stupid. Non-conformity, standing out in the crowd. People pointing at you. People talking about you behind your back. Who cares? Charismatic or legitimate leadership. Charisma. People often believe in authority when it comes from leaders who are charismatic or persuasive, making them seem more trustworthy or powerful. Charismatic. How many times have you heard, oh, I like Rishi Sunak, oh, I like Boris Johnson, he's very charismatic, he's nice, or whoever, insert any name above. What do you mean they're nice? Have you met them? Have you spent time with them? Do you know what their motives are? Do you know who's controlling them? Very charismatic on the television screen though, aren't they, these actors? Legitimacy. When authority is perceived as legitimate, for example, elected or selected leaders in a democracy, or religious figures in a theocracy, people are more likely to believe in it, even without questioning the rationale behind it. And there we have it, don't we? Democracy. We voted for this person, so we must trust them. They're legitimate. They're acting on our, best interests. Psychological comfort in hierarchies. Innate preference for hierarchy. Some psychologists argue that human beings have an innate preference for hierarchies, like chickens. This means people are more comfortable in environments where someone has authority, providing structure and clear roles. Again, it's just laziness. Somebody tells what to do. I'll just follow the orders, so I don't have to think for myself. I can just go home, open a beer, watch Netflix. Also, within that hierarchy, people like to dish out orders as well, don't they? They like to have their little 5 minutes of authoritarianism. People love getting up the hierarchy, pecking away at those beneath them, get some sort of sick pleasure out of it. Group belonging, following authority, often aligns with the behaviour of a broader group, and being part of a group gives individuals a sense of belonging. Following authority can foster group unity and a shared identity. I don't want a shared identity. I want my identity. I don't want to be part of a group. I don't want to conform. I don't want to be self-loathing and never be myself. I don't want popularity. I don't want a big group of friends. I want to do the right thing, not what somebody tells us to do. The right thing. Historical and evolutionary perspectives. Evolutionary roots. Historically, human survival depends on cooperating within groups led by authority figures, tribal leaders, elders, etc. This gave rise to a tendency to follow strong leaders who could protect the group or make crucial decisions. I'm sure it did, and I'm sure it's completely been taken advantage of and is now completely corrupt. Historical experience. In societies that have experienced periods of instability, war, or crisis, strong authority can be seen as a solution to disorder. This historical memory can enhance people's trust in authority. War or crisis? Created by the authority figures. Conformity and social influence. Social proof. When people see others respecting or believing in an authority figure, they are more likely to follow suit. Social proof reinforces collective belief in authority. Reinforces belief. Still not thinking for yourself, are you? Let's just follow that person, because I haven't got the confidence to do what's right or wrong. Right above wrong, I should say. Avoiding conflict. Here's a good one. Challenging authority can create interpersonal conflict, which many people prefer to avoid. Conforming to authority can thus be a path of least resistance. What did I say before? The path of least resistance. Let's just conform because it's easier to do so. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's wrong. It doesn't matter how many people it's going to harm. It doesn't matter if it's going to harm me. Let's just conform. I don't want conflict. I don't like conflict. I'll just agree with anything to avoid conflict. Because I'm self-loathing. Because I've got no self-esteem. Because I've got no self-respect. Because I haven't matured psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. I'm just going to conform. And I don't care about what's right. I want what's right for me. What makes me feel better. What makes me feel comfortable. Moral and religious beliefs. Divine or moral authority. In many religious traditions, authority is seen as a divinely ordained and morally justified, making it easier for people to believe in and follow religious or spiritual leaders. Morally justified. Get on to that later. moral order. Authority is sometimes viewed as a force for upholding a moral or ethical framework which people believe is necessary for justice or righteousness. Well, yeah, we do need to uphold morals and ethics, and we do need a framework for that. And it is necessary for justice and righteousness. But why do we need an authority to force their version of that? What is the authority's version of what's moral and ethical? I don't see anything coming out of authority institutions which is either moral or ethical. If you can't see that over the last few years, then there is no hope for you. In summary, belief in authority is influenced by social, psychological and cultural factors, including the desire for stability, trust in expertise, fear of consequences, and the influence of group norms. It helps individuals navigate complex societies while providing a sense of security, order, and identity. It does not provide a sense of identity, a group identity. Yes, not individual identity. You can see by that summary that it is a complete, manipulated and manufactured framework or belief. Nobody would believe in authority if it didn't exist. Not for everyday life and knowing the difference between right and wrong. Although most people don't know the difference between right and wrong, which we'll get onto in later episodes. So, what is it? We know what it is now. Is it benevolent? The etymology, meaning wishing someone well. Relative to benevolent, benevolentia, which is a good feeling, from being well volentem, to wish. So benevolent, to wish someone well. I've probably completely butchered that, but you can read it for yourself. To wish someone well. Do these people look like they wish you well? Do they give you a good feeling? We've got the house arrest of the 2020 PSYOP, where they coerced everybody into staying in their homes, locking themselves up, not seeing their friends and family, ending freedom as you know it, or certainly putting it on hold. If it ever came back, that's another question. Does that sound benevolent? Sure. They claim to have been reacting to a greatest threat, the greatest threat the world has ever seen. A threat so bad that even flu hid for cover. Does that sound benevolent? Should we not just be given the information and make our own choices? Or maybe you think society is so immoral that nobody's capable of making their own choices? Well, in which society would you rather live? A society where people make their own choices and will learn from their mistakes? Or a society where these hypocrites, sociopaths, and outright liars tell us what to do, coerce us, threaten us with violence to lock ourselves in our homes? Does that sound benevolent? And there you've got there as well an order follower, just following orders. I believe this was during the the psyop of 2020. Pepper spray there in an old woman's face. She looks a real threat, doesn't she? How dare you come out of your house? And there we have some innocent young child being forced some flu spray or something, I think that is. It looks benevolent, doesn't it? Or is it violence? The root meaning of the word violence is simply strong force. Demanding behaviours and dishing out threats of violence in the shape of fines, prosecution, and potentially caging another being is called duress. Okay? Threats of violence, strong force. They call it reasonable. Is it reasonable to force people to do things that you have no right to force them to do? Fines, stealing your money for petty offences. Offences that you've got the right to do the actions that you're doing, but they say you haven't, so they steal your money. And if you don't allow them to steal your money, they prosecute you. Those trustworthy lawyers, and potentially put you in a cage. That's violence and duress. The only time humans have the right to use strong force is in the act of self-defense or the defense of another. If somebody is a threat to you physically, then it is absolutely your right to initiate self-defense and use whatever force is required to defend yourself or another person. The idea that the authorities can initiate violence benevolently or nobly is a fallacy. Holding people under duress with threats of violence is a trait of an abusive relationship. It's immoral and it's simply evil. That is an abusive relationship. Manipulating, coercion, forcing somebody to stay at home, not letting them go out, not letting them see their friends and family, threatening them if they do that. That is an abusive relationship. And what do you tell somebody who's in an abusive relationship? Conform, obey. No, you don't. Get out. So now what do you think? Do you think they're benevolent or do you think it's violent? Hopefully you've changed your thinking on that, and it looks like you've had a bit too much to think. So, authority does not exist in nature. Nature is anything that would exist without the influence of humans. What is religion? Religion is a system of beliefs and practices, often centered around the worship of a god or gods, and it encompasses moral values, rituals, and a sense of community among its followers. It can also refer to a personal commitment to a particular faith. Belief in authority is a religion. It's a system of beliefs and practices, often centered around the worship of gods. These people who think they're God, these people who think they're authority, who can hand down laws to you. Moral values, their morals, relative to what they want. not objective morality, subjective, based on what they think and what they say. Rituals. Let's go and vote. Let's go and put an X on a piece of paper and turn on the television. Watch these sociopaths debating about what rights they're going to take away next. A sense of community among its followers. Yeah, the followers of this religion do have a sense of community. They all obey and conform, and it gives them a nice warm fuzzy feeling. It can also refer to a personal commitment to a particular faith. It is a faith. Absolutely. I've got faith. I've got faith in government. I've got faith in authority. I've got faith in doctors and scientists. They'll do the right thing. I've got faith. That's all it is. It's just faith. How's your faith going? How's your religion going? The devoted attention to and belief in this particular system, which is false, with its followers often living in an unconventional manner under the guidance of an authoritarian, charismatic leader, is the definition of a cult. Everything in that definition is the current system of what we live in. Leave your cult. How can I identify a cult? One way is by the bite method. It definitely bites you. This is behavior control. 6 feet apart, 2 meters, wear a mask. Act like you've got it. Information control, censorship. Can't say this on the internet, can't say that. Banned, censored. Absolute information control. Not given all of the information by the mainstream media, the prostitutes. Never give you the full story. Withhold information to control your perception. Thought control. Well, that's what information control is. If they can control what information you get, they can control your thoughts, your perceptions, and ultimately your actions, which are based on those perceptions and thoughts. Emotional control, emotional mind control, emotional manipulation is one of the best and most successful tactics coming out of the government and the media. Everything's got an emotional slant on it to persuade you into one way of thinking. Play on your emotions first, then hit you with some logic, and there you are, completely mind controlled. Belief in authority case study number 1. The Asch conformity. This is the Asch conformity experiment, which was a series of studies directed by Solomon Asch, studying if and how individuals yielded to or defied a majority group and the effect of such influences on beliefs and opinions. So this is about the group is the authority. So if you can get enough people in a room, and if everybody believes a lie, then the person who doesn't believe the lie, when questioned, will believe the lie. They will say that they believe the lie. Conformity. Even though they know it's a lie, they'll still go along with it, go along to get along, path of least resistance. So this is the group, the authority of the group. So in this experiment, I'll play a quick video, but generally speaking, in this experiment, there's a group of participants, there might be 6 of them. 5 of them are actors, 5 of them are going to lie, and the 6th one is a genuine participant who doesn't know that the others are lying. So the experiment is to see what the 6th person does when they're asked a question, in line with the lies that are being told by the rest of the group. So what they use is they use a line. So on the left there you can see that's the subject line, and they're asked to answer the question which line on the right matches. So you can clearly see that the line that matches the subject line is number 1, but the liars in the group, for example, will say number 3, 3, 3, 3, 3, and then let's see what the genuine subject, the genuine persons, let's see what they say. Okay, bear with me. Let's get my headphones on.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the 3 lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the 5th person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2,
2,
3,
3,
3, 3,
But on the 3rd trial, something happens.
2,
2,
2,
2,
2.
The subject denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
1,
Ash found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1.
1.
They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me.
1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment. He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1,
1. 1. 2.
1,
2.
2,
2.
I know they're wrong, but why
2.
should I make waves?
2.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing
2.
with the group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2.
So, there you have it. The power of the groupthink. The discomfort of going against the group. Going against your own eyes. What you know to be true. What you can see right in front of you. You'll just lie, just to get along. The discomfort of doing that, the psychological effects of doing that, I mean, that's just an innocent experiment. But how many people do that in real life? What's the effect psychologically? What's it doing to yourself? Lack of self-respect. Can you imagine when he came out of that experiment and he was told that he, basically just lied to himself? Just lying to yourself. Can you imagine the embarrassment, the internal embarrassment and shame and guilt, I suppose, wishing you had just told the truth, wishing you had followed your instincts, wishing how much of a hero you would have been, I suppose. Hero's a bit strong, but in terms of how much respect you would have gained from everybody else in that room if you had just told the truth and stuck to your guns. Can you imagine what it does to your self-esteem, subconsciously eating away that you're a liar? That, to me, is the most fascinating thing from this experiment. It's not just the surface level power of the group that it demonstrates, it's the internal, conscious and subconscious destruction of the self. Bear with me. So that was the Ash conformity experiment. Worth watching in full. Find that on YouTube. Worth watching in full, as I say. Bear with me, just waiting for the slideshow to catch up. My 16-year-old laptop. The next case study is the Milgram experiment. Beginning in August 1961, a series of social psychology experiments were conducted by Yale University psychologist Stanley Milgram, who intended to measure the willingness of study participants to obey an authority figure who instructed them to perform acts conflicting with their personal conscience. So I think I'm right in saying that part of the experiment, well, I think it is covered in the little clip I'm going to show you, part of the reason for the experiment was to try and study how Nazi Germany happened, how people just followed orders. They must have known that it was immoral what they were doing, and they followed those orders with little threat, to be honest. So that's the Milgram experiment. That's one of the subjects you can see there. I think we're going to see a bit more from him in the clip. Looks pretty traumatized. Okay. Bear with me while I work out how to get this on.
A decade earlier, psychologist Stanley Milgram had also looked at how we respond to authority. In order to understand how people were induced to obey unjust regimes and participate in atrocities such as the Holocaust, he set up an experiment. Volunteers were told they were taking part in scientific research to improve memory.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Where? Teacher.
Separated by a screen, the teacher would ask the learner questions in a word game and administer an electric shock when the answer was incorrect. He was told to increase the voltage with each wrong answer.
Cloud. Horse. Rock. House. Answer. Wrong. 150 volts. Answer. Horse.
Experiment, that's all. Get me out of here. Get me out of here, please.
Continue, please. Go right on.
I refuse to go on. Let me out.
You refuse to go The experiment requires you continue, teacher. Please continue.
Participants didn't know that the learner was really an actor and the so-called shocks harmless.
You're gonna get a shock, 180 volts.
Oh! I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not gonna kill that man there. I mean, who's gonna take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman? I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please. All right, next one. Slow. Walk, dance, truck, music.
Two-thirds of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure. In this case, a man in a white coat.
375 volts. I think something's happened to that fellow in there. I don't get no answer. He was hollering a less voltage. Can't you check in to see if he's all right, please?
Milgram's findings horrified America. They showed that decent American citizens were as capable of committing acts against their conscience as the Germans had been under the Nazis.
Yeah, normal, decent Americans just as capable as committing atrocities as the Nazis. So, a couple of things to note from that. The white coat, yeah, a man in a white coat is suddenly an authority figure. He's given a title in a white coat. This experiment, again, you know, search it on the internet, it's worth watching in full. How many people actually go the full, you know, to the full extreme of actually killing the learner on the other side of the screen. Obviously it's all set up, but they believe that they're potentially going to kill them, and they do think they've killed them. What was particularly interesting in that clip was when the guy was clearly uncomfortable and he said, it was something like, I'm not going to take responsibility, or who's going to take responsibility for this man? And the white coat guy just said, I'm responsible, I take responsibility. And then mind control, straight away he got on with the task. As long as I'm not responsible, I'll do anything. I'll follow the orders, and I'll hand the responsibility to somebody else. We covered this earlier in the presentation about responsibility for your own actions. You cannot hand responsibility to somebody else for your actions. It's impossible. It's a fallacy, and it's complete manipulation and mind control. So, a good example of authority, and where it comes from, and why we believe in it, and the fact that it's all completely psychological manipulation. Okay, bear with me. Within 24 minutes, I think, you can turn somebody from a normal citizen off the street to a murderer. That's the power of authority. So what we've seen in those two examples is a classic examples of self-preservation above all else. So self-preservation is essentially the process of an organism preventing itself from being harmed or killed, and is considered a basic instinct in most organisms. Most call it a survival instinct. So we all have self-preservation. We all have a basic need to survive. So we would defend ourselves, fight or flight. We'd run away or fight. That's natural. We talked about self-defense before. But this is self-preservation above all else. This is the self-preservation of the consequences of not following the authority figure. What's going to happen to me? And all he did was he told him it was an experiment. He told him that it was this teacher-learner thing where they were just testing to see if electric shocks increased the willingness or the capacity to learn and remember. I think it was memory, wasn't it? So what's the worst that could happen? He might not get his $10, or he might be, he might get a dirty look off the white coat man. I'm not sure what the consequences were of not carrying on. Don't know if I can't remember if something is laid out to them. I don't think there is, because I think that's the whole point. It's how far can we push a human just by wearing a white coat? So willingness to kill and certainly cause major harm to another fellow human being who you haven't even met. Willingness to do that just to preserve your own ego, your own, I don't know what the word is, just to preserve your own selfishness so you don't get wrong or whatever the consequences may have been. Self-preservation above all else. Some interesting quotes on this. Self-preservation isn't worth it if you can't live with the self you're preserving. We spoke about the Ash conformity experiment and how internally sort of traumatizing that might have been, given that you've completely lied to yourself, disrespected yourself, and you feel completely guilty and shameful. How can you live with that person if that's the way you behave in society? I'm not talking about one experiment. I'm talking about people who live their lives like that. They just go along with the group, believe in authority, agree with what people say, agree with nonsense just to get along. No wonder narcissism is on the rise, self-loathing. Another good quote: when we quit thinking primarily about ourselves and our own self-preservation, we undergo a truly heroic transformation of consciousness. Fantastic quote. We undergo a truly heroic transformation of consciousness. You can rise above all of the other, conformists and be your own true self. Raise your level of consciousness and be truly happy with your inner you. As far as the Milgram experiment is concerned, again, I can only imagine the impact, psychological and emotional impact, that must have had on the people who took part. I think it did cause a bit of a stir, saying that it was unethical, probably because of the psychological traumas that would have resulted from on the people that took part. But still, good example, well worth a watch. So where will it take us? So where will it take us? Kim Leadbeater suggests being a burden is a legitimate reason for assisted suicide. This is a piece of news from the UK at the moment, because the authority figures are pushing through a piece of legislation to make euthanasia legal in this country, in the UK. and the force behind this is MP Kim Leadbeater. The point I'm making here is these authority figures, MPs, politicians, they're going to legalize euthanasia in this country, and people are just going to take it. They're just going to follow the authorities, the authority figure, the doctors, the MPs, the lawyers, and they're just going to accept this. The MP behind the assisted suicide bill being voted on tomorrow, this is an older story, has suggested that fear of being a burden could be a legitimate reason to seek an assisted suicide. Fear of being a burden. That is completely manipulating the old and vulnerable, and those who are maybe have debilitating illnesses or disabled people. You know, all of the people who might feel that they're a burden on society. They're not a burden on society. But these people could be manipulated into feeling like they are, if they don't already feel like they are. How many old people do you know? Family members? Once they get old and lose their independence, have to regularly go to the doctors, need a bit of help with some physical jobs. How many times do you hear them saying things like, I don't want to be a burden? She goes on to say, I mean, there are people who have said to me, I think my mum would probably say this to me, but surely being concerned about being a burden is a legitimate reason as well, in terms of, I know I wouldn't want to be a burden to people. I can say to you now in the clear light of day, but that's very different to people saying, I'm doing this because I feel like I'm being a burden. Trying to make sense of what she's saying here is that if you say now that you don't want to be a burden in the future, that's normal. But it doesn't mean that people are going to say, I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to have an assisted suicide because I feel like a burden. She's trying to separate those two things, and it's just manipulation. It's absolute manipulation. This is completely playing on the vulnerability and the belief in authority and believing that this is moral. Liz Truss, she was previous Prime Minister for about 5 minutes. She said she was completely opposed to the bill. It is wrong in principle. Organs of the state, like the NHS and the judicial system, should be protecting lives, not ending them. I entirely agree. Not that that makes Liz Truss a moral person, but those words I agree with. No doubt, as we have seen in Canada, vulnerable people would be put under appalling pressure to end their lives early. The law would be ripe for being exploited by the unscrupulous. There's a full stop there and it says MPs, but really there shouldn't be a full stop there, really, should there? Exploited by the unscrupulous MPs. MPs should vote this terrible bill down and instead focus on improving health services, she said. Absolutely. We shouldn't just be killing off old people. Even if they're terminally ill, we should be looking after them and just making them comfortable. This led us to think about, in terms of self-preservation, which we've already touched on, there is another element to self-preservation, and it's called the self-destructive behaviour. So animals, or humans, in a social group often work cooperatively in order to survive. But when one member perceives itself as a burden for an extended period of time, it may commit self-destructive behaviour. Now, the explanation for this is that it allows its relatives to have a better chance of survival. And if enough close relatives survive, then its genes get indirectly passed on. The behavior works in the exact opposite direction of the survival instinct and could be considered a highly altruistic behavior evolved from the cooperative group. Self-destructive behavior is not the same as risk-taking behavior, although risk-taking behavior could turn into destructive behavior. So what it's saying here is that animal instincts, if somebody becomes, or one of the animals or one of the humans in the human family becomes too ill, they become a burden, and they can become destructive to the group, because the group has to concentrate more so on the sick or the survival of the sick member, that it's better if they just self-destruct, and then the group can survive and thrive and the genes can live on. That's the idea of this. But it's strange, isn't it? It's strange that when somebody feels that they're becoming a burden, they might want to take themselves out. This again is manipulating natural instincts of elderly or sick people. And it also made us think of the martyr complex and covert narcissism. And I can see this happening. The martyr complex in psychology is when somebody is so obsessed with attention or gaining recognition, gaining attention, that they constantly play the martyr. They'll sacrifice themselves, their time, their attention, their money, whatever it is, for the benefit of other people, or at least that's the perception, that it's the benefit of other people, but really it's just for attention, and they expect exactly the same in return. Well, I sacrifice myself for you, so I want you to sacrifice back. That's all it's for. It's just for attention, and it's because they want to feel special. They want to feel like they're doing a good deed. They're a martyr. I'm a good person. I put myself second, but really they expect everybody else to do it for them because they feel special, or they think they're special. And when other people don't martyr themselves, they get old and bitter and twisted. Even to the point where a mother might consider herself of having sacrificed so much for her daughter that the daughter owes them, constantly owes them. Look what I've done for you. I sacrificed money, my career, my physical self. I've done everything for you. I put a roof over your head. I fed you, clothed you. I mean, these are all just normal things that you do for your children. But the martyr wants payback. The reason I've put this in here is because I can absolutely see these types of characters with these psychological disorders. I can absolutely see them, for attention, taking the ultimate sacrifice. How often do old people, your parents, how often do they get poorly? And they don't tell you. And they may have been really, really poorly, to the point where they might have had to go to hospital. And then you don't find out until the next time you happen to visit. A week later, for example, you go and visit them, they tell you, oh, been in a hospital and you nearly died. Had to, do this, that and the other, and etc, etc. And your reaction is, why didn't you tell us? Why did you not tell us? Well, we didn't want to be a burden. And then, you might not think that the treatment they've had or the drugs that are on is in their best interests. Can't go against the white coats. Will they listen? Of course they'll not listen. They'll never listen to you before the white coats. Can you see where I'm going with this? You might just go and visit them one week and they're on death row. They've signed up. The doctors have agreed that it's their time. And you're never going to be able to stop them, because it's the ultimate martyr sacrifice. The amount of adulation and attention they'll get leading up to it will absolutely feed their narcissistic supply. And these types of people are going to be the first to go. After the legislation creeps down and creeps down and creeps down, it'll be the martyrs. Mark my words. Casting a spell. To use words thought to be magic, especially in order to have an effect on someone. These words are having an effect on someone, aren't they? These words of being a burden. They are going to have an effect on people, and they're going to go to the doctors. They're not going to be feeling their best, and they are just going to accept euthanasia. Call it what it is. Euthanasia. A gentle and easy death. An easy or happy death. A good death. She looks a bit like a witch, doesn't she? She. Where did she come from anyway? Came out of nowhere, pushing this legislation through. You'd think she'd be have more important things to worry about, like maybe getting justice for her sister who wasn't killed by Tommy Mayer, rather than trying to kill innocent citizens. So where have we heard the term good death before? Those faces look familiar, don't they? Matt Hancock and Dr. Luke Evans discussing the euthanasia or the murder of the UK public. Let's have a look at that in a second. Euthanasia is simply just another euphemism for eugenics, which in itself basically means man playing God. Eugenics has been around for thousands of years. The most recent incarnation, which everybody refers to, is obviously back in 1930s Germany, the National Socialists. They obviously took the what at the time was the modern version of eugenics from the UK. It flew across the Atlantic to America, and then it was adopted by the Nazis. And their version of eugenics was to increase and to improve the gene pool and to obviously get rid of the undesirables, the final solution. But eugenics really is just any sort of control. Man playing God, man trying to control either the gene pool, how many people there are on the planet, population control, birth control, all basically different euphemisms for eugenics. And these people do think they are God.
With that, I mean, good death needs three things. It needs equipment, it needs medication, and it needs the staff to administer it. So in terms of equipment, a few quick questions. Do you have enough syringe drivers in the NHS to deliver medications to keep people comfortable when they're passing away?
Yes, we do. There was a challenge raised about this about 8 days ago, and we resolved. Actually, it wasn't as big a challenge as was made public, and we've resolved that. So yes, right now we do.
And the second one is with that's to the syringe drivers deliver medication, particularly things like midazolam and morphine. Do you have any precautions put in place to make sure we have enough of those medications to be delivered?
Yes. We've got a big project to make sure that those sorts of medications, as well as the ITU medications that I spoke about earlier, that the supply chains, global supply chains for those medicines are clear. They are, in fact, those medicines are made in a...
All right, shut up, you prats. Let's have another quick listen at the beginning.
With that, I mean, a good death needs...
A good death. Euthanasia, openly talking about euthanasia, these sociopaths, murdering sociopaths. A good death.
It needs three things. It needs equipment, it needs medication, and it needs the staff to admit.
Equipment, syringe drivers, medication, midazolam and morphine, and people. Yeah, somebody's going to deliver the medication to kill these people. Who would do that? Who would knowingly just kill people with midazolam and morphine? Because that's what it is. It's a death cocktail. That's what they did. They euthanized tens of thousands of people. But they couldn't do it without the people. Without the unsuspecting administrative staff, the people who administered the cocktails. What would make somebody do that? Well, I think we've already seen that, haven't we? We've already seen that somebody will just follow orders and kill people. Thanks to authority. So that's where your cult of authority leads you to. It leads you to euthanasia. It leads you to do such hideous acts as kill innocent people. Just leave their faces up there for a while. 3 of them. 3 peas in the same pod. Witch and sorcery. Witchcraft and sorcery. Still walking the streets. Think they're God. Euthanasia or eugenics in Canada. So we've spoke about this new legislation that's being pushed through, which is allegedly just for the terminally ill. Well, who decides if somebody's terminally ill? The gods, which are the authorities. The men in white coats. The men in black suits. So Canada is a good example of what is coming down the pipeline. There's a few countries where euthanasia is now legal, and I think in every country where it's been legalized, the same slippery slope is apparent. So let's look at Canada as an example, and let's see who's eligible in Canada, because this will give us a good idea of what's coming down the pipeline in the UK. It is a complete lie that this is just going to be for terminally ill people. But again, who decides who's terminally ill? How many people have been given a certain diagnosis or a certain length of time left, and it doesn't come to fruition? They outlive that by many, many years in some cases. How often do doctors get it wrong and misdiagnose? If people can't see how dangerous this is, then I'm not even sure that they are alive. I'm not even sure that their brains are actually switched on. But that's the belief in the cult. That's the belief in the authority. It must be right because the authority says it is. It must be safe. They've got our best interests at heart. I don't need to worry anymore. I'm not going to go through any pain and torment because they'll just kill us when I'm ready. Or when they say I'm ready, actually, not when I'm ready. It's another story. So let's look at who's eligible in Canada now. At the minute, you must be at least 18 years old and mentally competent. I don't come across many mentally competent people these days. This means being capable of making healthcare decisions for yourself. This is not a comedy sketch. This is straight off the Canadian government website. Have a grievous and irremediable medical condition. Make a voluntary request for medical assistance in dying. Make a voluntary request. So you just go to the doctors and say, yeah, I'm ready to die. The request cannot be the result of outside pressure or influence. No, that's never going to happen. You're never ever going to have a doctor suggesting this to you, are you? Generally, there's good news though. Generally, visitors to Canada are not eligible for medical assistance in dying. So don't get any ideas. If you're visiting Canada, don't get any ideas. And if you're like me, you don't need to worry. They'll not just call you off and put you out in misery. Grievous and irremediable medical condition. So what's that? To be considered as having a grievous and irremediable medical condition, you must meet all of the following criteria. You must have a serious illness, disease or disability. Disability. It must be serious. I wonder who defines serious. Be in an advanced state of decline that cannot be reversed. Again, very, very shady wording. You must experience unbearable physical or mental suffering from your illness, disease, disability, or state of decline that cannot be relieved under conditions that you consider acceptable. What do you consider acceptable in terms of relief? Again, this is just creepy rules and regulations. Experience unbearable mental suffering. Those with severe depression, possibly. I'm feeling a bit down today. I think I'll, take the needle. Go and see Matt Hancock or Dr. Evans. You do not need to have a fatal or terminal condition to be eligible. You do not need to have a fatal or terminal condition. Again, this is the lie that they are putting out there in the UK, that this is only going to be for terminally ill people. This is where it's going. Mark my words. If your only medical condition is a mental illness, you are not eligible for medical assistance in dying until March the 17th, 2027. So, not yet. Not quite. So don't get any ideas. If you've had a bad day, you've got at least another two years to put up with. If you have a mental illness along with your other medical conditions, you may be eligible for medical assistance in dying. So, if you've got one of these other grievous conditions and mental illness, then you may be eligible. So there's still hope for you yet. That's where it's going. That's exactly what's going to happen here in the UK. We're just going to see these people off. This is from another Canadian website who are opposed to euthanasia. So let's just see what they've got to say. A committee of Canada's Parliament has called for the country's assisted suicide and euthanasia program to be extended to mature minors. Mature minors? A report by the Special Joint Committee on Medical Assistance in Dying, or MAID. Remember when the maid used to come to help? Maybe tidy up and look after you. Now the maid's coming to kill you. A report made by MAID suggests children whose deaths are reasonably foreseeable should be eligible. Reasonably foreseeable. What does that even mean? Who makes these decisions? Who defines what's reasonably foreseeable? The report also recommended that parental consent is not always necessary in certain cases where a child is considered eligible for a doctor-assisted death. Killed by their doctor, in other words. Parental consent is not always necessary in children, mature minors. Is this sinking in yet? Sick. It calls for the Government of Canada to establish a requirement that, where appropriate, the parents or guardians of a mature minor be consulted in the course of the assessment process for MAID. That's nice of them, isn't it? You know, that parents should be consulted. I can't even imagine the pain and suffering that these sociopaths are going to cause, where your children just comes home from school and goes to the doctors and no parents aren't consulted and that's it. I know it's not going to happen like that, but can you reverse it? What are you going to do? Strap them into their bed, into their chair, so they can't leave the house? It's ridiculous. But it adds that the will of a minor who is found to have the requisite decision-making capacity in the eyes of the state should ultimately take priority. The will of the minor? This is what I'm saying. What are you going to do? Strap them to that chair? Lock them in their bedroom? The will of the minor takes ultimate priority over the parent. Not only does the state think they're God, they think they're the parents. They've got absolutely no respect whatsoever for parents. And this is something where I don't even think people are shocked when you tell them this. It almost goes straight over their head, straight through their glazed over eyes. They just don't. I cannot find anybody who cares about this. Anybody who thinks this is sick. If I put across that it's sick, oh yeah, it is. You're right, Mark. You're right. But they're just agreeing with us. They're just conforming with me, because most people can't even think for themselves. They just don't care. It's not going to happen to me. That'll not happen to me, so I don't need to worry. And quite frankly, deep down, they probably think, oh well, yeah, I think I'd rather go that way as well, because they're cowards, weak little children trapped in adult bodies. It also goes on to say on that same website that planned welfare cuts could push some to assisted suicide. Planned welfare cuts. Benefits for sick people, benefits for disabled people, benefits for people who've been given a diagnosis which isn't the best, which causes them mental stress, and that could push those people to assisted suicide. Just a coincidence that, there's planned welfare cuts and they've got this legislation, this final solution for you. This is not a coincidence. How much longer are people going to say that the government are, just make mistakes, or incompetent, or sort of through incompetence, they've legalized state murder, state sacrifice. They've legalized that, and they're making huge welfare cuts to the very audience who are eligible. That's incompetence, is it? Are you for real? And that, when I read that, it reminded us that here in the UK, we have just gone through a budget, I think. I think it is the spring budget, and they have made benefit cuts. And this is an article, a headline from the BBC News, the source of all truth. Benefit cuts plan is absolutely terrifying. Obviously that's not the BBC's words, that's the words of an anti-poverty activist with physical and mental disabilities. And she said that she is absolutely terrified by the UK government's plan to make it harder to qualify for benefits. Can you see what's happening here? The UK are doing exactly what Canada have done. They're legalising state murder, and they're cutting the vulnerable people, the people who are vulnerable in society, and the people who are going to be vulnerable to this legislation. They are making benefit cuts to those people. I don't think I need to even finish off what the actual plan is. Yeah, it's not incompetence. Don't tell me it's incompetence. And if governments were incompetent, then why does none of their incompetence lead to good news? Lucky mistakes. Good, positive mistakes. Have you ever made a mistake and it's actually benefited you? It's actually had a good result, but you did it by accident. I didn't mean to do that. But it's turned out good for us. Oh, I'm so pleased I went to that. I'm so pleased I put the wrong score on the betting slip that I intended to put on. But hey, it turned out because that was the score. Why do governments never do that? Why do they not accidentally make decisions that just happen to have a huge benefit to the public? Because it's not incompetence. And it's not them at the helm anyway. Anybody who thinks that. You need a brain scan. So let's look at some stats for eugenics in Canada. Remember who's eligible: elderly or anybody whose death was reasonably foreseeable, whatever that means. Those suffering from a grievous and irremediable condition whose death was not reasonably foreseeable. The disabled or debilitated. Those with mental illness from 2027. The feeble-minded, in other words. Because that's what these eugenicists, that's what they see people with mental illness, mental health issues. They see them as feeble-minded. We've been there before. We've seen it. And it's soon to include children. So in the 7 years that euthanasia has been legal in Canada, they've killed over 60,000 people. Not bad. Not bad going. Eugenics in socialist Germany. Inside the Action T4 program, the little-known euthanasia initiative that killed as many as 300,000 disabled people as the Nazis swept across Europe. So the T4 was the gateway to the Holocaust. Both prior to and during the Holocaust, Nazi authorities executed a massive, yet lesser known, program of targeted mass killing aimed at some of the most vulnerable people under their control, the disabled. Starting as a euthanasia program that eliminated disabled infants and children deemed unfit to live, and expanding in time to cover disabled adults and the elderly, the program ended in 1941 amid a welter of protest from many quarters of German society. So notice, it's interesting that they started with infants, disabled infants and children deemed unfit, and then expanded to cover disabled adults and the elderly. So they went the other way. They started with children and then worked their way up, where we're just going in the back door, starting with the elderly, terminally ill. And they always use extreme examples to push through legislation. So they'll say this is for the really extremely ill people who have got a terminal diagnosis. You know, it's only a very few people who will suffer to the degree that they'll require euthanasia. So they use extreme examples to get this is the emotional mind control we spoke about earlier. They play on people's emotions because nobody wants to see that elderly relative, their mum or dad, suffer. Who does? I've seen my parent and my father-in-law suffer at the end of their life. I know exactly what it feels like to watch a loved one suffer towards the end of their life. But they use these extreme examples to get on your emotions and then give you some logic. Well, we'll just kill them. We'll just put them out their misery, like you would an animal, like you would a dog. Well, they're not animals. So it makes sense to people because nobody wants to see suffering. So the logic follows the emotional manipulation. That's the mind control technique that they use all of the time. Watch it. Tug on your heartstrings, give you some logic. Who wants to see their parents suffer? at the end of their life, put them out of their misery. Makes sense. It's emotion, then logic. But they use this mind control technique to convince the public to accept these completely immoral laws, and then they use, once they're in the back door, then they expand them. That's what's coming down the tracks. Just to finish off this slide, but the machinery for mass killing that this program developed would not be idle for long. These victims, as many as 300,000 of them in total, helped the Nazis refine the methods they'd soon use to carry out the Holocaust. So that's how it started. These eugenicists, they started off with the weak, the old, the feeble-minded, and the disabled. And then they obviously thought, well, you know, let's expand. Let's take this to the race. Let's get rid of the undesirable races. These people are sick. They're absolutely sick in the head. They think they're God. They're completely morally bankrupt, and they walk in the streets. And most people, they don't even care. Test it. Tell somebody about this, and see if they care, because they don't. As long as they've got the beer and their Netflix, and Newcastle have won the cup, everything's right in the world. Everything's right in the world. Can debate whether or not this is ethical till the cows come home. It's not. Nobody has the right to kill. Nobody has the right to kill. From conception to natural death. That's it. End of story. The official figures from the Action T4 program, at the time it was believed that 70,000 people had been euthanized in this program. It's only over the years that the numbers have crept up and more evidence has come to light, and that's how we currently have the figure of 300,000. But I think, you know, up until a couple of decades ago, the official figure was thought to be 70,000. So let's think about this. The official figure is 70,000, but it's closer to 300. So the official figure of Canada is 60,000. I wonder what the real figure is. But they're doing well. You know, they're only 10,000 behind the Nazis. And there's more to come. They didn't finish after 2 years. It's expanding. Euthanasia is not painless, peaceful, and dignified. Nobody has the right to kill another human being. This is morally, objectively true. Under moral, natural law, nobody can give another man or woman or doctor a right that they themselves do not possess. I do not have the right to kill you, so I can't give that right to a doctor. Stop believing in your sick religious cult that wants to murder your friends, your family, and your loved ones. Stop believing in your cult. Euthanasia is not painless, peaceful, or dignified. I'm just going to cover one last little bit. If you just bear with me. Computer's froze. Bear with me. So I'm just going to read some excerpts from a book called They Want to Kill Us. I urge you to get a copy of this book. It's probably too late now, because they've already obviously got this bill so far through. It's probably a bit late trying to do anything about it, but I do think this should just be brought to the attention, and people should see this for what it is, and it's not too late to raise awareness so people can't be fooled and manipulated into taking this action, and we can't let it expand. So this book, I kind of came across this book by accident. I ended up reading it just a couple of months ago on holiday. It's only 100 pages. You know, you can read it in a couple of sentences if you really want to. And I'm just going to read out a few sections of that book just to put some of this across. So the author is called Jack King, but that's not his real name, that's a pseudonym. The author is actually a doctor who obviously wants to keep his identity hidden for obvious reasons. So this is not just some conspiracy theorist who's wrote this book. This is somebody who genuinely cares. So it is a convenient myth, convenient for the proponents of euthanasia, that euthanasia is painless and dignified. There is absolutely no evidence to show that it is either, but there is plenty of evidence to show that it is neither. Euthanasia does not provide the painless, peaceful death which its advocates claim it to be. There is no perfect way for the government to kill people. A study in the journal Anesthesia reported that there were no standardized methods for euthanasia, and so as a result there are frequent cases of prolonged and distressed deaths. There appears to be a high incidence of vomiting, reawakening from coma, and prolongation of the dying process, with some individuals taking up to 7 days to die. This is harrowing. In America, doctors cannot access drugs to use in cases of the death penalty because of cost and availability. International drug companies are unwilling to provide drugs intended to kill people on ethical grounds. It is unusual to see drug companies citing ethical grounds as a reason not to do something. I suspect that the real reason is that the drug companies are worried more about legal and reputational issues. Dr. Brian Betty, Medical Director of the Royal New Zealand College of GPs, has warned that mixing concoctions of drugs has led to traumatic deaths. There is considerable confusion about what to do if an initial attempt at euthanasia fails. Should the patient be told that they have to give their consent to a second time, or a third time? What should be done if a patient is semi-conscious and has not died? Should they then be kept alive? Or should another attempt be made to kill them? A study performed in the Netherlands showed that 21 in 114 cases, the patient did not die as soon as expected, or woke up and the doctor had to kill them for a second time. I'm laughing, it's obviously not funny, but this is the madness of it. This is not humane at all. What happens if the doctor or nurse who is performing the euthanasia has left the building? Which is likely to happen if a death takes a number of days. So what did they do if that person wakes up and the doctor who's obviously got the responsibility, what do you do with the person? What happens if a doctor or nurse cannot put an IV line into a vein? This is something which often happens with elderly patients whose veins may be frail or damaged. The same drugs which are used for killing prisoners on death row are sometimes used to kill patients who have consented to euthanasia. But there is evidence that the killing of prisoners does not always go smoothly and can take longer than might be expected. Lethal injections were introduced as more humane than the gas chamber or the electric chair. There is no evidence that they are. One of the drugs used in the authorized killing of patients is propofol, which can sting as it flows through the vein when given in normal doses. No one knows what effect it has when given in a large dose in euthanasia. Obviously, how are you meant to know the effect? Because the person experiencing it is obviously being euthanized. Another doctor, a critical care doctor, has suggested that death by euthanasia could feel like drowning. If paralyzing drugs are used, the patient appears calm, peaceful and quiet, but that doesn't tell us what the patient is experiencing. In other words, you can't take away someone's suffering by putting them through even more suffering until they die. It's sick. When killing drugs are given orally, the death can take up to 10 hours. If a doctor or nurse is not available with an IV kit ready, the distress to patients and relatives can be considerable. People being killed by drugs may make gasping noises. We don't think they are signs of distress, said Dr. James Downer, a specialist in palliative and critical care. Note the word think. We don't think they are signs of distress when they're making these gasping noises. Monitors are not used when a patient is being killed. This means that there is no evidence about what is happening, and death can only be certified by a doctor or nurse feeling for a pulse. No attempts are made to monitor brain or cardiac response. It doesn't surprise us that they don't want to know what's actually going on inside these people, because it would reveal to them how sick and evil and immoral they are. Autopsies of executed American prisoners show the accumulation of fluid in the lungs. This is very distressing for the patient, for the patient is effectively drowning in their own secretions. Experts fear that patients being killed may suffer intolerable, unbearable physical or psychological pain. In Belgium, the relatives of a 36-year-old woman heard screams when she was supposedly being euthanized. A post-mortem showed that the woman had been suffocated with a pillow after the drugs failed to kill her. This is like some sort of comedy sketch. A gunshot would be quicker and probably more painless than drugs. Why don't advocates of euthanasia endorse the idea that doctors should simply shoot patients? Patients could, like nurse Edith Cavell, be put on a chair and shot in a scruffy courtyard. It would be faster and more certain than any other way of killing. A firing squad could be made up of doctors and nurses, with special fees for the occasion, of course. A study of more than 200 autopsy reports after executions in 9 American states showed evidence of pulmonary edema in the lungs, likely to cause a feeling of drowning or suffocating. Midazolam, used in executions, has caused signs of pain, including gasping, choking, and coughing, with patients heaving against their restraints. Evidence shows that some people who choose assisted death vomit their lethal dose of the drugs before it can be absorbed. It goes against what we were talking about before, self-preservation. At this level of basic instinct, nobody wants to die. Instinctually, nobody wants to die. I watched my father-in-law hang on and hang on and hang on. Even he had no quality of life whatsoever. Entirely bedbound, weighed about 6 stone, and he couldn't do anything. And he hung on and hung on like the stubborn little git that he was. That's survival instinct. So it stands to reason, it makes absolute sense that this is not easy for people. There is no easy way to take somebody out other than, as the book says that I've just read out, a shotgun. But no, we wouldn't do that, would we? Because that would be completely immoral. And then obviously these people, these sick sociopaths, it would be too blatantly evil for them to get away with. They would do it. You would have no shortage of takers for the paycheck, for the pay the direct debit, get the car, the house, the lifestyle. Yeah, I'll shoot them. They wouldn't even cross their mind whether it was moral or not. It's like, on my hand, my responsibility. Who's taking this responsibility? Is it me or is it the state? Is it the man in the white coat? Is it Stanley Milgram? No, I'm not responsible. All right, give us a gun. Yeah, I'll do it. That's what would happen. Because that's how immoral people are. It's really sad, the world that we live in. That this is what we do to people who are vulnerable, who need our care, our love, and they need to be given the most comfortable send-off, the most respectful and dignified send-off. End of life. They should be made to feel worthwhile. Children with mental health issues, disabled children, some of the most special children you might be lucky enough to meet, and this is what we're doing to them. This is absolutely sick. This is authority. This is the cult of authority. Go along to get along. Conform, keep your mouth shut, and this is the sick state of the world, of this country, but of the world that we're leaving for our children, all of our children. That's why you have to speak up, you have to say something. Okay, thanks for listening, if you've been listening. I'm off. I'm a bit peckish. See you later.